You can
Yeah.
pretty much look at any society that you want to look at right now. And there
All
are
the same.
signs of collapse. Germany's a nightmare right now. China is
Yeah.
obvious. The U.S. is not as obvious, but when you dig a little deeper, we got very serious financial problems too. But Germany might be the worst of everybody. My God,
The Financial Survival Network. Now more than ever.
Let's do it. And welcome. You are watching and listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. John Rubino is with us now. Hope you all had a wonderful, wonderful New Year's. Hey, it's January 2nd, 2024. This is the time where we look ahead at what kind of year it's going to be. We forget about how awful 2023 was in so many different respects. And yet the world didn't end, John. Here we are. Stuff is still happening. Inflation is still inflating. Stuff is still getting more expensive. And, well, what happened today? The NASDAQ tanked the first day of 2024 trading.
Hey, Kerry. Yeah, that was an interesting first day of trading, because stocks in general were okay, but tech stocks got smacked. And a big part of that was Apple. It looks like the world is saturated with iPhones now. And so Apple sales are not going to be as robust as they used to be. And that is starting to come out now. People are starting to get that. And so Apple stock was down pretty hard today, but not just Apple. A lot of other tech stocks were down. Let's see, Intel, and do you count Netflix as a tech stock? I kind of do, but
yeah, it's
part,
a cloud.
Part tech, part medium.
It's a cloud
media.
stock.
Yeah.
It's a cloud stock.
Anyhow, they were both down hard today too. And that could easily be a sign of things to come, because they're wildly overvalued, first of all, and stocks in general are wildly overvalued. The S&P 500's PE ratio is something like 25, and normally in recessions and bear markets it gets down to 12 or whatever. So we could easily see big stocks be cut in half just to be fairly valued for what's coming. So I think what happened in the NASDAQ today is, one day doesn't really tell you that much, but when the bear market comes, days like today are going to become the norm for several months. And, we could easily be heading into that right now.
All right. Well, hey, I am the first to admit I never saw the Santa Claus rally coming, but it would be appropriate that first trading day of the year, Santa Claus, he's back in the closet along with all the Christmas decorations for next year, right?
Well, in December, the Fed announced that it was going to stop raising interest rates and start cutting interest rates. So that, perfect timing for a Santa Claus rally, right? Because that's, a massive relief rally when people think that tight money is over. But what we never seem to understand every cycle is that the Fed stopping raising interest rates is not the same thing as the Fed easing. Because everybody's debt that has to roll over is still going to roll over at today's higher interest rates. So monetary conditions are tightening for a big part of the economy still. And they'll continue to tighten until interest rates go way back down. And that's not happening yet. We're still in the high threes, right, on the 10-year Treasury. So if we get back up into the fours, we get back up to what, everybody thought was the terminal rate for this cycle. So monetary policy is still technically tightening for a lot of different entities out there. And that once people start to figure that out, that it's going to be a long time before we actually get easy money, even if the Fed cuts a couple of times
if
in
ever.
2024. Yeah.
If ever.
So, yeah. Well, I mean, we can't function with money this tight without the economy blowing up. So we have to get that easy money. Yes. Yeah. Nobody can handle interest rates at this level going forward. So the Fed and all the other central banks are going to have to ease aggressively, but they're going to need a crisis to make them go back to QT on steroids and get us down to zero or negative interest rates. That's going to take a big thing to happen. And there's no shortage of candidates for that, right? From geopolitics to commercial real estate to consumer finances, you name it. And something bad is going to happen pretty soon, and the Fed is going to then go into full-on easing mode.
Hey, let's look at the 2-year, because the 2-year is really crucial. The 2-year Treasury, it finished off the day at 4.244. Just like a month ago, it was up at 5.25. Okay, it was 5.5 because the Fed funds rate's got to stay ahead of the 2-year, right? And now we're looking inverted yield curve because the 2-year is at 4.277 or 4.244 rather. It opened at 277, and the 10-year is at 386. Right? Does that sound inverted to you?
Yeah. Well, interest rates around 4% are still too high for this economy, a leveraged economy like this, because that still implies a 6.5 or 7% mortgage rate, right? And the average mortgage out there is around 3%, which means, mortgage rates dropping from 8% to 6%. That doesn't unlock all the people that are locked into their 3% mortgages and can never move,
Right.
So that still has to happen. Yeah. I mean, for you to buy a new house with a 6% mortgage,
why would I do it?
Why would you do that? That's right. It's got to be, otherwise an incredible deal. Well, one thing that could make that happen is if house prices go down by half from here. So you have these mathematical adjustments that have to happen, and they can't happen with the current setup. So one of the parts of the setup have to change, and I don't know what it will be. I tend to think that, normally a recession is the mechanism for the adjustments to happen. And there's no reason to think that it won't happen this year again in this cycle. And that we won't have this soft landing that everybody's talking about because, credit card debt is $1 trillion and personal interest is spiking. You can't grow an economy organically with new debt if personal interest expense is doubled in the last year and will double again in the next year if nothing happens. So all of this stuff. Oh, and I think you sent me the thing about student loans.
Yeah.
They kick back in, but nobody's paying.
Hey, imagine if you had a student loan moratorium and nobody showed up, once it ended, right? It's exactly what's happening in China too. I mean, as bad as things are here, they're way worse in China because China's experienced a multifaceted collapse, meaning their economy is collapsing. All that nice new infrastructure they built, which was tofu dreg, that's collapsing. Moral collapse, Communist Party collapse. I mean, we're kind of like mirroring each other, except that we don't really have the infrastructure collapse because all of our 100-year-old infrastructure was built way better than we ever expected it to be. But our collapse is happening on multiple levels as well, right?
Well, we've got infrastructure issues too. And the current infrastructure plan probably won't deal with it because, what we have that's in collapse is roads and bridges and airports and things like that. And if we put a bunch of money into offshore wind plants or something like that, that doesn't fix our bridges or anything. So we're still kind of in that place too. You can pretty much look at any society that you want to look at right now. And there are signs of collapse. Germany's a nightmare right now. China is obvious. The U.S. is not as obvious, but when you dig a little deeper, we got very serious financial problems too. But Germany might be the worst of everybody. My God, they and it was all self-inflicted. Germany basically committed suicide. And there's no other way to put it. I mean, Angela Merkel 5 years ago was seen as this solid conservative leader, doesn't make stupid mistakes, but it turns out everything she did was a stupid mistake.
Yeah. And that's the truth.
Yeah. Unlimited immigration, developing a reliance on Russian natural gas, and then going along with a NATO plan to start World War III
Yeah.
over Ukraine, which got the pipeline blown up by the US. And now basically Germany is doing a thing called deindustrialization because they allowed all this stuff to happen. And their economy used to be based on taking cheap natural gas and turning it into industrial products and exporting those products. Well, now the natural gas is gone, or the cheap natural gas is gone. So they're basically having to shut down. And the only reason the Eurozone still exists is because Germany was backing everybody up via the ECB. So you take that away, and there's no real rationale or no real scenario in which the euro stays a functioning currency and the EU stays a functioning trade bloc. So, Germany going takes Europe with it, and
Yeah.
there doesn't seem to be a solution.
I don't see it. That's for sure. I definitely don't see it. In the meantime, hey, we ended 2023 with gold above 2,000, and it seems to be sticking there for the time being. And at this point in time, I kind of take predictions about gold price with a grain because everybody's been so wrong for so long. But at this point, though, it looks like we're getting higher highs and higher lows, and the trend is in our favor.
Yeah, nothing's guaranteed yet with gold. It could, in 2 bad days, it could be back below 2,000, but it is held up there for quite a while. I think it finished the year at the highest ever yearly close. And then it made its highest ever monthly close before that.
Correct.
So these are good numbers. And now we've got the seasonality, as always, going for gold. January is usually a good month. And we've got central banks buying gold aggressively. There were 2 straight years of 1,000-ton uptakes of gold from the central banks, which is huge. Those are really big numbers in the context of a 4,000-ton a year output from the world's mines. So we've got the biggest, most deep-pocketed buyers in the world buying aggressively. And now we've got Costco selling gold bars and selling out every time they get any in. And then Walmart just started doing the same thing. And now both Costco and Walmart are selling silver as well as gold. So at both ends of the spectrum, the small guys at Costco buying individual ounces of gold, who never could do it before, now they can impulse buy precious metals. And then the central banks, the biggest players in the global financial system, aggressively buying gold. So I think there's a lot of fundamental reasons to think or to hope that this is a time in which gold starts the next leg of a serious bull market. So, here's hoping, but I think it's totally possible. Oh, and the Fed is easing again. It's not easing aggressively yet, but it's starting to. And gold usually embarks on a bull run when the Fed stops tightening. Equities have to wait for aggressive easing.
Right.
Gold starts sooner. And if past is prologue still, then this is that time with gold's relationship with the Fed when it would normally start moving. So you got a lot of favorable factors in the gold space right now, and who knows? I think this could be an excellent year for precious metals.
I totally agree with you. And hey, everyone thinks inflation is beat. Now, you and I are old enough to remember Gerald Ford's win campaign, Whip Inflation Now. So I'm starting a new site called the Inflation Cafe, and we're going to start a Whip Inflation Now campaign. And let me just tell you how I got inspired by it. I was at an infamous coffee establishment that shall go unnamed, but that basically allows any antisocial behavior to take place within their confines, regardless. And I looked at the price of my latte, and it was $7. And I said, and it was skimpy. They shorted me. And I said to him, you don't sell coffee here. You sell inflation. and you're the inflation cafe. Hence, the site is being set up now, and the inflation cafe was born. So my first effort is going to be to start a win campaign to whip inflation now, because there's so much we can all do about it, right?
Yeah, we can take care of that in a heartbeat.
Because it worked so well for the last time it was tried, right?
you got all these people saying now, oh, why are people so pessimistic? Inflation is down to next to nothing and the economy is growing. We actually have a good economy. Why don't people see that? Paul Krugman, among others. But what they don't get is that if you have a big bout of inflation and then prices stop going up, that doesn't fix things for the people who now have to pay 30% more for all of life's necessities. So life gets hard and stays hard for them even after price increases stop. So, life is going to be hard. Voters are going to be pissed off no matter what until we have deflation. And then deflation is painful in its own way too. So there's no way to
blow up when we have deflation. You know that. They blow up. They love inflation because that papers over all their mistakes. But when we have true deflation, banks blow up.
Which is why we can never have true deflation in this system.
No.
Because too many over-leveraged entities will blow up, like you said. So we have, the vast majority of people in the country are paying way too much for life's necessities. Their wages are not rising nearly enough to make up for it, and they're suffering. So the people who don't understand this, first of all, I'm surprised they don't understand it. It's not a very complicated idea, but there are political implications to this, one of which is populism sells in this kind of an environment. You can, if you run on a platform of, listen, these guys are screwing you over. Look how hard your life is. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to clean house and take back what's yours. You win. And I think that's the political reality in the US and most of the rest of the West. And I'm going to close the borders, and you add that to, I'm going to get your prices back down. And you're very hard to beat as a politician. So I think, the Republicans discovered this. Now the Democrats have to discover it too. So it's an arms race of populism. That's what we'll get in a year or two.
Well, it's so ironic, John, who is bitching most about the runaway situation at the border now? It's all the blue cities. Now, I read that Governor Abbott of Texas had gratuitously provided 85,000 people with bus and airplane tickets to various blue cities like Chicago, New York, and these are sanctuary cities. They're supposed to have their arms wide open, Statue of Liberty, send us your beaten, your dreary, and all that. And they're the ones that are bitching the loudest about it. So I think we're on the brink of a solution. But who's ever running the show in DC wants this situation because the NGOs get paid like $100,000 per illegal alien, and all the Obama phones that get handed out and the free medical care and the free food, all that. Obviously, somebody's profiting by this and they want it. They like the situation the way it is. But for the rest of the country, driving it further and further into bankruptcy, maybe not such a great thing.
Well, open borders have always been attractive to the elites. On the Republican side, that's cheap factory labor who can't complain about working conditions because they're afraid of being deported. On the Democrat side, it's voters who depend on the government and will therefore vote for the party of government, which is the Democrats. So both of the powerful people in both groups have a vested interest in open borders, but it's the 95% who aren't in those two groups who are being hurt by this. And I think the backlash is coming fast. I sent you that chart that we talked about before we went live.
And we'll put that up. We'll put a link to the chart in the show notes. I'll try to embed it on the thumbnail if I can.
Okay, because new births from illegal immigrants now exceeds the number of new births from American citizens. Can you imagine?
That's insane.
That situation? That is well, actually, if the chart is right, I didn't do the basic research or anything. I just pulled this chart. But if the chart is true, then that means that we're basically committing national suicide, in
Yeah.
effect.
Pretty
And
much.
it's astounding that could. I would have never guessed that we'd gotten that far into this, but we're there, and the pendulum is going to swing back so hard and so fast at some point that
Oh, yeah.
it's going to shock the 5% who think everything is okay.
But we know we've seen this before, man. This is just yeah, like they don't live in reality, These people do not live in reality of like having to get a job and having to meet bills and all this, the policymakers. It's like the generals in the army are, eating filet mignon, and the troops are having MREs that are moldy,
Well,
That's what it's like here.
it's a case of different realities. If you're a
Yeah.
billionaire, or you're the CEO of a company, or you're a politician with a safe seat, or if you're a bureaucrat that's been appointed by politicians with safe seats, if you're any of those guys, life is good.
Mhm.
And you don't understand why so many people are so discontented, because you don't live in the world of having to stretch your
Yeah.
paycheck all the way to the end of the month, and then seeing Costco raise their prices by 30% on the basic stuff you buy. You don't have to see
know.
that. You don't go shopping. So
No.
yeah. Now this is not unusual. This is the standard aristocracy script, right? You
Yeah.
change the rules so they don't apply to you anymore. You live fat and happy. You don't understand why the peasants are revolting until they cut your head off. So that's coming. That is coming, metaphorically speaking, hopefully metaphorically speaking, that's
Yeah.
coming pretty soon.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. But when you live just for today, then you don't have to think about it. Hey, so what about what's going on here in Harvard here? This lady here, like, I looked at her and I said, she's the president of Harvard, before I knew anything about her. When she was testifying before the House and wouldn't condemn genocidal protests and all that, but she just seemed to be like somewhere else. And now she's a serial plagiarizer, and they keep finding more and more stuff that she plagiarizes verbatim. And I guess intellectual integrity, some little things like that, don't matter to Harvard anymore. If they
Well,
did.
our colleges have become insane asylums where the inmates run the asylum. And the Harvard thing is a perfect example of that. Is that she couldn't explain why calls for the genocide of Jews would be unacceptable on her campus. But yeah, once people looked more closely at her, it wasn't just that one inability to connect two ideas together. It was the fact that let's be blunt, she's the ultimate diversity hire.
Yeah.
She's an
checks
African.
a lot of boxes there.
Yeah, she
a lot of boxes.
checks a lot of boxes. And it turns out that she has, as a tenured Harvard professor, she has 11 papers published. And that's all. That's like, your third year in as a postdoc or something like that. You should have that many papers published.
God, that's a week of John Rubino's Substack, man. Come on.
There you go. Yeah. And her Harvard was ranked dead last on a scale of freedom of speech among colleges. So she was kind of a would-be dictator, a would-be woke dictator, and a really inadequate academic who got the job because Harvard liked the idea of having somebody who ticks a lot of boxes in charge. And here we are now, and I would be surprised if the rest of the Ivy League was any better. So you're going to see a house cleaning, I think, now.
Yeah.
As everybody, because now that's a Pulitzer Prize winning beat for a reporter, right? You go to these colleges and you find out who the frauds are, and you publicize them.
You got to know.
So expect the press to dig into this, and expect these colleges that have basically just been, fraudulent all these years in the last decade or so, and expect them to get cleared out in a hurry or be publicly humiliated and lose all their donors and stuff,
Yeah.
which for them that's the ultimate nightmare. If people stop, they don't care if kids don't show up because they can always replace straight A students. There's plenty of them out there in the world of grade inflation. But if the $100 million building naming donors stop showing up, then that's a catastrophe. And that's what a lot of these guys are looking at, I think.
Yeah, totally. Hey, I remember I once read the definition of diversity is celebrating our differences while pretending not to notice them.
Yeah, because it's diversity of outward appearance,
Yeah,
but not
not thought.
diversity. Yeah, not diversity of thought in these schools. They are absolutely monolithic when you look at the opinions and the political affiliations of the people running these schools. And you can get away with that. See, you can get away with all kinds of things in good times. What Warren Buffett's old quote about, only when the tide goes out do you see who's swimming naked.
Yeah.
And suddenly the tide has gone out on high-powered colleges. And they are naked, and they're not the kind of people you really want to see naked on the beach, right?
Hey,
They're naked and ugly at the same time. Yeah.
Look at all the law firms
Yeah.
in New York, big law firms that said, we're not hiring Harvard grads anymore. And that's going to spread. And that's the kind of thing that they care about, because it's like, oh, well, our graduates were hired by the top 10 law firms and they're making X amount. And that's their like prestige. That's their halo. And once they don't have that, I don't know what they do have, because honestly, the law school that I went to, I would put my legal education up against Harvard's law school any day of the week. More of our people passed the bar exam in New York than Harvard grads. So isn't that the ultimate test? First time out?
You would think that it would be. Yeah, I do a once a month thing on Substack called Art of the Collapse, about all the
Yes.
memes and the satire and stuff. And I started this last one with Harvard, because the memeverse has just had a field day with this whole thing.
Yeah.
There's two things that I ended up posting. One is a bumper sticker that said, "My kid did not go to Harvard." Because, there's these bumper stickers about my kid is in Harvard and stuff like that. Well, now it's reversed. And the other is a Dilbert cartoon where there's an job interview, and the boss says, I assume you went to college, but I don't see it on your resume anymore. And
Yeah, I saw that.
the guy says, well, yeah, I went to college. And the boss says, it was Harvard, wasn't it? And the other guy says, I'll see myself out.
I love it.
And yeah.
I love it.
So that's real now. People actually think Harvard is a laughingstock. So
Yeah, it should be. As well it should be. I mean, there are so many law firms that have just stopped, and then there's major hedge fund guys that have pulled back their donations to these Ivy Leagues. And once they're just hoping it's going to blow over and everyone will forget it. But things like this don't so much blow over so quick, do they?
Well, no. And this is a battle of very powerful lobbies right now. And it's interesting to see a clash of people with this kind of political power out there. So I'm, curious about where it goes, because it's fascinating so far. And I just, you got to hope all the turmoil ends sooner rather than later, but there's no guarantee that it does at all. This could be a multi-year story.
Yeah. I think this will go on, because this is all part of the cultural war taking place not just in the U.S. but all over the world, and it's more of what we have to look forward to for 2024. Hey, if we can finish 2024 in the same place where we are now, it will have been a major victory. I'm not counting on it. The wars are heating up in Israel and in Ukraine, and where this craziness is going to end. The only thing is, it's winter now. So basically, they'll fire missiles at each other and artillery, and they'll resupply, even though eventually, we didn't even talk about the fact that the House said we're not going to fund Israel or Ukraine if you don't do something about the border. And they had a deal like a few weeks ago, and that deal collapsed. And now they're just waiting around. I don't know who's going to blink here, you know?
Yeah, this is there's really gridlock on a lot of these things, and that's a good thing for the Ukraine war because I think, like you said, it's winter, it's harder to do stuff there now, and the U.S. is no longer willing to fund Ukraine in an open-ended way, and it's coming out that Russia has always been offering peace deals all the way through
Yeah.
this. They've been willing to settle. So now there's no way the U.S., now that it's public knowledge that Putin was like, yeah, we'll settle on today's terms, yeah, and he's been saying that over and over again. There's no way for the U.S. to hide that fact, even in the mainstream media. And so there's no excuse for not getting on board some kind of a negotiation and cutting a deal, because the deal is the simplest one in the world. Just Ukraine does not join NATO, and doesn't bomb the Russian parts of Ukraine. And that's it. That was the whole deal. That was all they had to do. So, that is literally lunch. You could figure that out in the time it takes to have a couple of glasses of wine and an entree and dessert and get it over with, And so I think they will do that pretty soon.
Hey, so have you been following what China's doing to the Philippines? They're like, basically, China has declared the entire South China Sea as their own, and they are firing water cannons at the Philippine fishing fleets and basically provoking the Philippines, which has led to a wholesale rejection of China by most countries in the world and a reaffirmation of the alliance between the Philippines and the United States and Japan. And I don't know what's going on here in China, but it's like, I think the same people are running China as are running the United States, John. They have like no conceptualization. The Belt and Road Initiative, that's in tatters. They call that the bribe and rape, the bribe and rape, trail or whatever initiative. That's in shatters. Everybody is defaulting on that. And man, like, I always thought the collapse was going to be in the West. I never thought it was going to happen all over at once. I mean, no place is safe from these sociopaths here, John.
China is kind of a special case. And there's a guy named Peter Zion that you and I talked about on your show before. But his take on China is that they're demographically collapsing, that they basically have one more generation of military-age men.
Yeah.
And after that, massive shortage. They won't be able to project power 20 years from now. And this is therefore their last chance to solidify their influence over there. So they're feeling rushed to take over the South China Sea and put their naval bases there and everything, because they know they can't, 20 years from now or 10 years from now even, they won't be able to do it. And so it's making them reckless. And the last thing you want is a declining power with nuclear weapons who is desperately reckless, right? So it makes China dangerous when they wouldn't normally be.
Hey, what's really interesting is Henry Kissinger said 40 years ago, 2 or 3 times China had the opportunity to become the preeminent power in the world, and they blew it every time. And he said they were going to blow it this time as well. And when you look at the stories about the weaponry, they've become a major arms exporter, except all their stuff is basically garbage. And their missile system, their whole thing that they were so proud of, as it turned out, was hacked by the US and taken control of. And they had a nuclear sub blow up that might have been a result of the fact they were hacked. Nobody knows exactly what's going on in that place. But the last thing they need now is a cult of personality like Xi, like they needed Mao last time, and something has to give there too. So these are the black swans for 2024 is who's going to collapse first. And, Russia, China, US, Germany. It's just an unbelievable mess out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, by the end of 2024, your show and my show, and when we're together, is going to be all, oh my God, did you see that? Oh, it's going to be one of those just exclamation
They
after
did what?
exclamation. Yeah.
They did what?
Oh, geez. Did you ever expect that to happen? Yeah.
Oh.
So we should enjoy the good old days while we can, we're physically safe. Our
Mhm.
kids are physically safe, and nobody's going bankrupt all around us right now. So
Yeah.
these are the good times. Enjoy them.
Hey, this is why always, always, always don't worry about investing in stocks. If you have a portfolio, that's great. Always invest in yourself, human capital, in improving yourself, and just do something new, whatever it is that's going to make you happier as a person and more fulfilled. And then the sociopaths can't get to you because you've beaten them at their game. They can only get you by manipulating the news and everything else and making you believe things that aren't true and making you disbelieve things that are true. But once you get past that and you find your own truth, there's nothing they can do to touch you. Hey, that's it. Everybody out there, happy 2024. Be glad 2023 is gone. Just hope that we don't look back and look at 2023 as the good old days, like our parents always used to talk about, the olden days. And hey, John's Substack, Rubino.substack.com, link in the show notes, our site. Sign up for your free newsletter. Get ready for the Inflation Cafe. It's opening shortly, and we will be sending out a little swag. I'm working on a Whip Inflation Now bumper sticker and pin, and we'll be passing that out to everybody who joins the cafe. John, happy 2024. We'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
Okay, see ya.